In the second installment of my Flight Simulator Back to the Basics series, we took you inside the cockpit of the Cessna 172 and introduced you to the cockpit layout and gauge layouts, also explaining briefly the functions of each panel and gauge. In today's video, we're going to go one step further and take you through the flight checklist for the Cessna 172 from before engine start to before takeoff. So strap in, get a pen and paper ready for notes, and let's get started. My name is Michael, and this is the Sky's the Limit Aviation channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to prep your aircraft for flight by using the aircraft's checklists. The checklists themselves can be found in the cockpit of the aircraft by locating a small area of icons anywhere on the panel. The icons vary per aircraft, but you're looking for the icon with the check mark here as shown. Click on the icon and this display will open up. It contains your flight briefing, ATC messages, your navigation log, keyboard assignments for all of the aircraft functions, the aircraft checklist page, reference page with your V speeds and flap settings, and finally mission objectives if you happen to be flying a mission from the main menu. Since we're going to be concentrating on the aircraft checklist in this video, we're going to go ahead and click here to open the checklist tab. Scrolling down, we'll start with the before starting engine checklist. The first item on our before starting engine checklist is the brakes, and we're going to test and set the brakes, and we do that by pressing the control and period keys. So we'll go ahead and let off the parking brake, hit period to make sure the brakes are working. We see that in the lower left corner. We'll go ahead and do that a second time, and we'll go ahead and set the parking brake by hitting control and period. Second item, electrical equipment autopilot off. Autopilot is off. Avionics master switch should be off, and we're showing off. Fuel selector valve should be set to both, and it is set to both. Before starting engine checklist is now complete. Scrolling down, we go to the engine start checklist. There are two ways to start the engine. You can either press Control and E to initiate an engine auto start sequence, which is just done automatically within the simulator, or you do it manually according to the checklist. We're going to go ahead and do it manually. First item is the throttle. We're going to open the throttle about 1/4 of an inch, as shown here. Mixture set to rich. That's going to push all the way in to the backstop. We're going to check and make sure the propeller area around the aircraft is clear. We will turn the master switch on. We will then turn on the auxiliary fuel pump. And using the ignition switch, we're going to go ahead and turn it from off to start. Now that the engine is started, we're going to go ahead and check the oil pressure. Oil pressure is coming up. We can go ahead and turn off the auxiliary fuel pump. Beacon and nav lights will now come on. Avionics master switch will now turn on. And we're going to make sure the flaps are retracted to 0 and the flaps are retracted to the full up position or 0 degrees. And with that, the engine start checklist is now complete. We have now taxied down to the approach end of runway 7, which is the active runway here at KLZU this afternoon, where we'll complete the remaining items on the checklist. Back inside the cockpit, we are ready to complete the before takeoff checklist. First item is the parking brake. We make sure that that is set. If not, we hit control and period. Next is a flight control check. For that, we'll have to go outside of the aircraft for this. And our first check is to make sure that the elevator is free and clear and moves. So go ahead and go full up, neutral, full down, back to neutral, ailerons, left aileron, neutral, right aileron, back to neutral. Finally, the rudder, full left, neutral, full right, and back to neutral. Flight control check is complete. We can go back into the cockpit, pull our checklist back up. Next item is flight instruments. We just want to make sure that there's power going to all of the instruments and all appears to be okay. That is checked. Fuel quantity. We have full tanks on the left and right. Fuel quantity is checked. Mixture should be set to rich or all the way in. Fuel selector valve, recheck and make sure it's set to both. Elevator trim, we're going to set to takeoff. So we're going to scroll down with the mouse wheel until the little arrow is pointing at the TO for takeoff. Elevator trim is complete. The next item is going to be our magneto check. For that, we'll have to move the checklist over just a little bit so we can see the tachometer. We're going to raise the speed of the engine to 1800 RPM. At 1800 RPM, we're going to go ahead and go here and check the magnetos. We're going to set to the right magneto, the left magneto, then over to both, and then back to start. If you look carefully, there's a slight RPM drop that should be just a little bit less than 150 RPM. This is normal. Next check will be the suction or vacuum gauge. It's in the green. Engine instruments and ammeter. Aircraft generator is producing power. All the instruments look good and normal. The next check is going to be the annunciator panel. We'll go ahead and shut off the checklist. The annunciator panel is where you get any of your warning messages. Right now the only thing showing is the volts because we do not have the alternator turned on. Once that is done, we can bring the throttle back down to idle. Reopen the checklist. Strobe lights will turn on. Radios and avionics, we want to make sure we're set, that we have our frequencies set up for the tower or ground or whoever we've been told to communicate with. Autopilot is off. Flaps, we're going to go ahead and set to 10 degrees for takeoff. And finally, the brakes, if we were told to go ahead and enter the active runway, we would go ahead and release those by hitting the period key, and then we would taxi onto the active runway. And with that being completed, our before takeoff checklist is now complete. And that also completes today's video. In video number 4 of our series, we'll complete some additional items on the checklist, take to the skies and fly around the Atlanta metro area, and we'll come back into LZU for a debrief. If you like this video, please smash that like button, leave me a comment, also support the channel by subscribing. This is Michael with the Skies Love Aviation channel, wishing you clear skies and smooth flying. Bye-bye for now.